Ladies and gentlemen, our guests today are two global icons. The first man is someone whose story is really the story of India over the last 3 decades. Our personal histories are so intertwined with his exploits that it sometimes becomes the only reference point for our lives, where we were, what we were doing when he did something magnificent. He's a Bharat Ratna, a national treasure, and a god of the game for all times to come. The other is a Caribbean prince who unified the islands with the swish of his blade. He enthralled the world with a hunger for big runs that was unfathomable, completely unprecedented. He did it with a high backlift and a 360-degree arc that somehow blended brutality with beauty. Through the 90s and the 2000s, and even for us, people of our vintage, the only debate was Sachin or Lara. So today, at the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit, we have Sachin and Lara. Big round of applause, everybody. Okay, so let me start, Sachin, actually with you, and I want both your thoughts on this. We've grown up to your two names being taken together so often. Do you remember meeting each other for the first time, setting eyes on each other? What were your first impressions?
The first time I met Brian was in 1990. It was in Toronto. And I'd scored my first test 100 at that time. And just after that, there was an exhibition game in Toronto, West Indies versus the rest of the world. And I saw him in the hotel lobby. Also later on, we met on the field. But in the hotel lobby, the moment I saw him, we kind of got along well. There was something going on between us, possibly because we both were the youngest players on our respective sides. Both are to a certain extent vertically challenged, so it helped my eye line was very much there, rather than looking at Ambrose, Walsh, Bishop, all these guys. Our eye lines were very much there, so I could get hold of Brian. And whenever, we met after that also, Brian would either look out for me or I would look out for him. It's not the player that he is, but actually the person that he is. And I value that friendship. In cricket, everyone knows what he's done on the field. But my first impression about Brian was terrific balance, that agility in the crease, getting to the pitch of the ball, and then having such great hands, wrist work. It's a God's gift.
That's great. Brian, what were your thoughts about our man?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Sachin is quite right. I think it was in Canada. We also met in Sharjah and in Australia before the 1992 World Cup. We played a couple of World Series in 1990-91. And by the time I met Sachin, as he just mentioned, he was already an established test cricketer. Only a teenager, but a very established. I had played one test match through the fact that someone got injured. Viv Richards missed the tour, and I was given a test match. But I was now playing an intense amount of one-day cricket. And I was grateful for that because, as Sachin said, I was very small, very fragile, and I didn't think of myself as a one-day cricketer. So I had the opportunity now to hone my skills in the one-day game, start batting a little bit quicker, scoring runs, finding the gap. But my first impression of Sachin, and I was a student of the game. I watched a lot of cricket, I listened to a lot of cricket, I read a lot of books, and I've never seen an Indian batsman so accomplished against extreme fast bowlers. Now we know Indian batsmen back in the day were very good players of spin, but we were talking about a teenager and someone who scored runs against the best teams in the world, the best bowling attack in the world, home and away. And I believe from that day, I sort of measured myself against Sachin. He was a few miles ahead of me at the time, and I really and truly, I know as young players coming up in different countries, playing for our countries, I really wanted to be on par with someone like that. So it was a pleasure to get there and to also spend a lot of time with him.
Lovely to hear you talk about each other this way. But let's just sort of recreate that time a little bit. You know, it's the late 80s, early 90s. You're both just starting out. And your initiation into the West Indies team, I believe, was a kind of baptism by fire. Will you just tell us a little bit about that?
You want to know about my little, my debut match? Well, actually, it was one of those periods in my life that, in anyone's life, they're going to remember. It was about a week long, a week earlier. India was in the West Indies, and I got a big 100 against India. And a few days later, my dad called, and he asked me if I heard the team. I said, no, I didn't hear the team. He said, you're in the squad. And I got the letter from the West Indies Cricket Board with all the instructions and congratulatory notes. And the next test match happened to be in Trinidad and Tobago, where I am from. And I've been playing for Trinidad first-class cricket for 2 years. And I was supposed to get to practice at 9 o'clock. I got there at 8 a.m. in the morning. And I put my bag in the dressing room, and I went and I had a knock out on the grass. At 9 o'clock, the West Indies team arrived, and the great Sir Vivian Richards, Gordon Greenwich, Desmond Haynes, all the great players, all my role models came out of the bus, and I immediately got nervous. By the time they got to the dressing room, I felt it was my time now to go meet my teammates for the first time. Approaching the dressing room, my bag came flying out of the dressing room and landed in front of me. My bat scattered, my pads went all over the place. And I picked up the pieces, and I walked back into the dressing room, and where I placed my bag in the dressing room at 8 a.m. is where Sir Vivian Richards placed his bat for the last 10 or 15 years. So that's the baptism I got. I spent the first 5 days of my career.
Did you find out who threw the bag out?
Huh?
Did you find out?
Sir Viv confessed. He said, Sir Vivian Richards threw my bag out.
He said, don't. But in a way, it is a kind of a passing of the baton.
Yeah, well, he said
I think it's sad for West Indies cricket that you didn't throw anybody's bag out.
No. He said you're the prince, but the king is still around.
You won't believe, it's a coincidence, but you sat in Sir Viv's place, and when I was actually a ball boy at Wankhede Stadium, World Cup was going on in 1987. Sunil Gavaskar invites me to the dressing room, says, come, I want to say hello to you. And actually I'm inside the Indian cricket team's dressing room, and Gavaskar himself is calling me. I was super excited. And I saw a spot where he sat, he introduced me to a few other players, and coincidentally, he retired the following year. And I went and I sat at the same spot. So luckily, my kit bag was not thrown out. My kit bag stayed at the right spot.
That's another passing of the baton. I'm loving this running between the wickets. You can please continue jiving with each other freely like this if you like. Was a common factor for the both of you, I'm going to come to you first, Sachin. Was Viv Richards a common factor for the two of you in that sense as a role model when you were growing up, watching cricket, just starting out playing?
Yes, so Viv was one of my role models. The other one, of course, Gavaskar. And I just loved the way he carried himself on the field, that effortless batting, and sometimes the whole world thought he had blocked the ball, but it would actually go past the rope. And that authority, that body language was something which attracted me. I still remember I was in Australia in 91-92 series, and I was with Sanjay Manjrekar. We were in Melbourne, and we were going out for lunch, and I saw some gentleman walking inside the hotel. I said, I recognize this walk. And Sir Viv is walking inside the hotel. I was like I was anyways a 18-year-old kid then. I became a 12-year-old kid from there because, my hero walking in front of me, Sanjay Manjrekar had already played against him, and I knew. So I told Sanjay, forget about this lunch and shopping. I have to go and say hello to him. By then he had already gone to his room. So we go to the reception, we find out his room number, and I'm kind of forcing Sanjay that you have to take me to his room right now. So we go to his room, and that was my first meeting with Viv. And after that, there were a number of occasions where, we chatted with each other. I also remember that difficult phase in 2007 World Cup when Sir Viv called me from Antigua because I was contemplating retirement. So he called me and he had a word with me for a good 40-45 minutes, convincing me that there is plenty of cricket left in me. So those kind of things stay with you forever, and then when your batting hero tells you, it has a huge impact.
Brian, how was Sir Viv to you after he had thrown out your bag? How was he with you, when you started out?
So it was tough, but my first hero was Roy Fredericks.
Right.
Short, just like myself, wear his long sleeve shirt, which I had as well, and left-handed batsman. So Roy Fredericks, I was also an opening batsman when I was a kid. But Sir Vivian Richards, the swagger, the confidence that he oozed is just amazing. As a West Indian, watching him play around the world, every single West Indian adored Sir Vivian Richards. My time with him in the West Indies team was very short, maybe a couple of years before he retired. He was very stern disciplinarian, and he wanted the best out of you. I think I learned a lot under Sir Vivian Richards as a captain, and he's someone that I admire. I didn't think I had the same skill. He was very destructive as a batsman, but I learned about the confidence that he carried and how to use that confidence, in mental wars against bowlers and opposing teams.
It's a great testament when you're calling somebody very destructive and saying he was more than me. It says a lot about the kind of impact that he had on cricket at that time. Sachin, I'm going to come to you now. I know you're with us at the HTLS Leadership Summit, and we're very happy to have you here. But I believe many years ago, when you scored your first 100, you were slightly disappointed with how the media was treating that. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Is this the right forum to discuss all this? Yeah, I was only 12 then, and got my first 100 in inter-school game. And my photo did not appear in the newspaper. And my friends kept, nagging me. They kept, pulling my leg. Arey, tera photo aaya nahi. Normally 100 karne ke baad photo aate hai sabke. Tera nahi aaya. So I went back home and I told my brother, my father happened to be there as well, that, all my friends are saying that photograph appears in newspaper if you get 100 or you get a 5. So my father, in our building itself, one of his friends also congratulated him that, I read that Sachin scored 100. He said, no, he's slightly disappointed because his photo didn't appear in the paper. So the friend tells my father, you ask Ajit, my brother, elder brother, we'll see what we can do. So he apparently knew someone in one of the publications, and after a few days, there was a huge write-up with my photograph. And my family members were totally taken aback because nobody was expecting this after 6-7 days. And it was such a moment where nobody wanted to go out of the house. They said, nahi, itna sab kuch hone ke baad, hum nahi bahar ja sakte. So they were kind of, puzzled there, and the day was spent at home because my article had appeared with a photograph. It's kind of thoda sa embarrassing for family to deal with something like this. We were never exposed to all this.
Little did they know that every single expression of yours would be in the papers in the years that would follow. Brian, do you have memories of sort of breaking out, getting noticed, being this guy everybody's looking at and saying, he could play for the West Indies?
Yeah, I'm happy that Sachin talked about searching in the newspapers for your name or your face as a teenager. Well, I know in India there's tons of publications. There's only 2 in Trinidad, so it was easy to find my face if I scored 100. But yeah, it's as a youngster, one of the things that you do, I came from a family of 11. I have 6 bigger brothers and 4 sisters. And everyone was very sports-oriented. And I played cricket from the age of about 4. All my brothers were bigger. We played in the streets. We played in the savannah. We played with cricket balls, flannel balls, with oranges, lines, anything that we can put our hands on. And I remembered at the age of 6, my dad saw an ad in the newspapers for a clinic. And from the age of 6 to 16, every Sunday morning, I went to Harvard Coaching Clinic. And from there, I can hear the coaches, I can hear the parents of other kids talking about my batting. And back then, it sort of gave me that confidence that I needed as a youngster. Because you really don't know where you are as a 7, 8-year-old growing up. You know, you're playing the sport that you like, and of course you have heroes playing for the West Indies cricket team. But you really can't put that in perspective to say, well, you know, I'm going to be something in the future. But I believe that a lot of encouragement came from my fans or the people that looked at me from a very early age.
I mean, a support system, you know, at that stage is so important. And, you know, in India, of course, there's this whole family jamboree that, you know, follows people who do really well. Sachin, for example, when you were going to England for your first tour, I believe there was a great show of affection from everybody around. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
That was another embarrassing moment for me. I was only 13, and at my first foreign trip, I'd never worn a jacket till then. So a blazer, formal shirt, tie, formal trouser, proper shoes. My family got excited. Both my grandmothers thought, you know, what is happening in his life? We must drop him to the airport. And grandmothers took the initiative, and they made sure that all my family members, including my uncles, my aunts, everyone was there at the airport to see me off. And you can well imagine a 13-year-old where other guys are also there and they are looking at all these things happening. वो छोड़ते नहीं ऐसे फिर प्लेयर को, एक महीना मुझे उनके साथ बिताना था. So I was actually so embarrassed. मेरे फैमिली मेंबर्स ज़्यादा थे टीम मेंबर्स से, तो अभी जाओ हो गया, everything is done, चलो you go home. So that was my experience.
I have something very similar. I was 14 years old, and there was a schoolboys tour to India, Trinidad and Tobago schoolboys tour. And my dad was given 20 barbecue tickets to raise money. By the time he finished a couple of weeks before the barbecue, he sold over 300 tickets to the whole village. And there I was as a 14-year-old at the airport with my parents and, of course, my entourage, my whole cricket team with me, my brothers and sisters. And I visited India as a 14-year-old. I went to Trivandrum and Baroda. It's an eye-opener for me. I mean, I'm talking about when Sachin might have been still in Pampas. He might have been 10 years old. But yeah, I mean, back in those days were really the fun times of playing cricket.
Yeah, I'm liking this. Boundary, single, boundary from here, great. On that note, let's talk about your partnership together in Toronto in 1994. I mean, not everybody has watched it, not everybody knows about it, but there was a time when you guys were together on the crease for a reasonable amount of time and had a lot of fun together. What do you remember of that knock?
Well, I think we should share this. Which part do you want me to take, Sachin? Well, I think Pakistan just won the World Cup 1992. And it's 20 years late. It's what, 30 years later now? So we never know. It's 2022 now. We don't know what Pakistan is going to do tomorrow. But Imran Khan took the Pakistan team to Canada. They were invited. And myself and Sachin found ourselves on the rest of the world 11. And it was AstroTurf. It was the Sky Dome. And they had to place, plyboard and then AstroTurf over the surface. And when Ambrose and Walsh, who was playing for the rest of the world, started bowling, the ball was bouncing and it was a bit dangerous. So the captains came together and they decided that the bowlers can't run up for more than 15 yards to deliver the ball. And Pakistan went on to make a decent total. Let Sachin continue from here, because we had to walk out to bat to face Wasim Akram, Waka Yunus, Imran Khan, and others.
Aqib Javed, all these guys. I mean, that's when Brian realized that, you know, there can never be a friendly match. it always eventually gets competitive, and I think we scored about 330, 340 something. We got into a brilliant partnership. I think we had some 170, 180 run partnership, and we finished. Brian got 100. I scored some 70, 80 not out, and then we had chased those runs in some 38, 40 overs or so. So that was an experience because, Brian suddenly realized that, those lines don't exist, when you're bowling second. And that is what a number of matches that we played against them would happen, that, normally they would say, okay, hum pehle batting kar lete hain.
I should take over from here, because what happened was that when we started batting and we started to knock the ball around, Imran Khan said to one of his fast bowlers, don't worry about the line, just go back and bowl from wherever. And Waka Yunus went back and delivered this short ball to Sachin that went over the keeper head into the boundary fence for 6. I said to Sachin, Sachin, I don't think these guys are following the same rules that we followed. I looked back and Waka Yunus was way past the mark. He said, don't worry. So I said, okay, I'm at the non-strikers then. If you said don't worry, you're taking the heat. And the next ball, Waka dropped short. And I don't know if you know the Sky Dome, but I think it was about 60 or 70 rows back when the ball landed. And then I realized that, okay, I'm definitely batting with a genius.
Great study. So, on that note, you've met each other, you've seen each other play, you've played with each other. What are the qualities about Sachin that you admired as a player and you thought, I wish these are the qualities that I had? Was there anything about him that sort of jumped out at you?
Oh, geez, well, you are asking me to dream very big there, because I think that the patience and the fortitude that Sachin showed, and it's no doubt he has a far better batting technique than I had from day one till the end of our career. And if I could have been as patient enough to score a double century, I think it was 2004, a double century without playing a cover drive, a shot that was getting him out. If I had that patience, I think I might have been smoking cigars after every single time I go to bat, because it was just unbelievable to see the discipline that he showed in Sydney that day. Yeah. I think it was 241, 42. Yeah. And I mean, even Steve Waugh mentioned that it was just an unbelievable knock. So for me, the patience, the fortitude, the willingness to stay out there and grind it out is something that I admired about Sachin Lara.
He's being a good friend.
No, but Sachin, it's really, I mean that knock, what it would have taken out of you is really quite, and it's been talked about. So a little bit about that, and then about Brian you wish you had.
It wasn't decided, honestly, that I don't go and play that cover drive. My brother had kind of challenged me because I was batting well, but not scoring big runs, and I'll come to that. So brother said that, the bowlers are not getting you out. There is no visible weakness as such. But the weakness is in your shot selection. So that is where you need to tighten up a little bit. I said, okay, I'm willing to accept this challenge. In this test match, I will not get out to anyone. It doesn't matter who is bowling at what stage, I will not get out for 5 days. And then I walk out to bat, and suddenly I realize Australians had planned that 70% of the deliveries will go to Adam Gilchrist, make him leave. We 11 players can test his patience. And that's when I decided, if you are going to test my patience, I'm prepared to test your patience. And let's see who gives up first. And that's why I did not play that cover drive. And when we talk about big runs, I'm going to come to that. The appetite. He's not a huge man in structure, but when it comes to appetite for runs, these big, massive kit bags are not enough for him. He needs. He always carried with that hunger and that consistency, that flair. The way he planned, because our interactions, in the 90s were to do with cricket as well. Generally one would interact, but one point I picked from him categorically was pacing his innings and knowing when to take chances. Because when you saw Brian's innings, the way he constructed those long innings, there were a number of occasions where he took calculated risk, and that was evident to me that if you have to play big innings, there are going to be patches along the way where you need to accelerate and put the pressure back on bowler, though he managed to keep that for a number of years that he played cricket. But I thought that ability to score big runs was simply incredible. If somebody's got 400 runs in Test cricket, do I need to say anything more than that?
Yeah. No, and it's, so Brian got the 500. He got in first class cricket. He got the 375. He broke Gary Sobers's record, which existed for 4 decades. And then he just let it be. And then 10 years later, Matthew Hayden comes along and scores 380 to break his record. 3 months later, Brian goes and gets 400. It's like, I'm not letting you have that one. What was it about you and these knocks?
I just think it's destiny. I don't think anyone in here could tell me. It was the 4th Test match of the series against England in 2004, something like 6 months after Matthew broke the record. But I'm sure no one could tell me the total amount of runs I had here in the first 3 Test matches. I had 100 runs in 6 innings, averaging 16 point little bit. And so it's nowhere in the back of my mind I could be thinking 400. No way at all. I knew that we were 3-0 down in the series, and we needed to, worst case scenario, draw that Test match. And I went out there with a mindset of staying out in the middle. And things gradually got easier. And it's the way I bat as well. I normally feel that I need to survive for the first half an hour, 45 minutes, and try to get the momentum swinging into my direction. When that happens, I try to keep that momentum throughout. It just happens to be 10 years later. It happened to be England. But I could tell you for sure that it was not in the back of my mind. But to get 400 runs in a Test match was exceptional. I mean, no one would believe that I scored 500 runs in a series, but all came in one match.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems a bit too much of a coincidence for Matty Hayden to do that and then you to settle the scores, but yeah, we'll just go with your story. Were there moments, but, and I just want a quick answer from both of you, where you felt invincible on the ground, where you felt today, I can do anything I want. I know exactly what's happening. Nobody's going to get me today.
Fortunately, that never happened to me. I felt that the way how I went about batting in any form of the game was to survive at the beginning. And I felt that the bowler had a 70% chance of getting me out. I had a 30% chance of surviving. But if I'm there an hour later, that is going to change more in my favor. So, later on in my innings, I can tell that I mentally and physically was dominating the opposition. And that's when I felt not necessarily invincible, but I felt that, I was in total control of the proceedings going out in the middle.
Sachin, what about you? I mean, captains have said this about you. There are times when they see you on the pitch and they know today we can't do anything.
There are times when you walk out on the field and you feel that today nothing can go wrong, and that's the thin line between being confident and slightly overconfident, and as we call it, there's always a red flag around the corner when you become too confident. But there were occasions where you end up playing a rash shot because you feel you can go out and do it. Before playing that shot, you never think that you're going to go wrong. Had I realized that, I would have corrected myself on a number of occasions. But that is what the game teaches you. Every time you go out to bat, you're not in the same frame of mind. Your thought process changes. And there were occasions where I felt I can go out and play big shots. Sometimes you kind of look at the bowler's body language and you know where the bowler is going to bowl. And you set yourself up for that big one. They come through sometimes, and sometimes you're kind of walking back to the dressing room cursing yourself.
Okay, we can keep talking. Time is a constraint as well. But there's, I just wanted to speak to both of you about, a third great cricketer of that era, who we very tragically lost recently, Shane Warne. And, I think there's anybody who could, stand toe to toe with the two of you in terms of stature in world cricket at that time. It was him. Do you have any memories with Shane? Some stories, some thoughts about him that you would?
Yes, in 2000, I had invited Warnie over. I said, come to my place and we'll do a nice meal. So I asked him, I particularly checked, are you okay with Indian food? He said, yeah, don't worry. I said, are you okay with spicy food or slightly milder side? I said, yeah, avoid spicy food. So I told my chef, khana thoda less spicy rakhna. So he had accordingly prepared. I had also invited my manager, Mark Mascarenas then. And here we are sitting on the table and I'm serving everyone. And Warnie is, eating a little bit and looking around here and there. And I asked him, how's the food? Are you okay with it? Is it too spicy for you? He said, no, it's delicious and all those kind of things. And then suddenly my manager kind of looks at Warnie and said, what happened? So he kept nudging him under the table, saying that take some food from my plate because it's too spicy for me. And I can't tell Sachin. So eventually we were in the kitchen. I had only heard stories about Warnie's baked beans and all that. But that actually turned into reality. He was onto sausages and baked beans and all those kind of things. Pizza, we ended up ordering a pizza for him. So it was not just the newspapers which were writing that Warnie was fond of baked beans and pizzas and all. It actually happened in my place. But he didn't want to hurt my feelings and he kind of handled that evening rather well in spite of food not being so spicy, but he was never comfortable with Indian food is what I discovered that evening.
Did you spend time with Warnie as well?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Warnie on the cricket field, off the cricket field. We played a lot of golf together. And I believe that I found out why he was so good at what he did. If Warnie was standing over a 1-foot putt, he was as competitive as if he's bowling to Sachin at the Wankhede. He was so focused, and I think that definitely one of the greats. He had an inauspicious start. I think he bowled a lot against subcontinent batsmen in the first few test matches that he played. But his breakout test match actually was against the West Indies at the MCG in 1992, where he got 7 for 52. And from there, his star just rose to a level that is unbelievable for spinners. I think he sort of killed the concept that was created by Clive Lloyd that you need to have 4 fast bowlers to win a test match. I think his spin was tremendous, and along with Murali, during our era, I think we played against the 2 best spinners in the world.
We won't talk about how you dominated Murali on that Sri Lanka tour. Okay, we are in the middle of the T20 World Cup. Of course, we will also not mention too much about what happened to the Indian team yesterday, but day before yesterday. But you watch these guys play these kind of shots they play these days. What do you think of that? Are there some shots that you like? Are there some that you say, oh, I would have liked to play? Or what do you think about the way cricket is changing in terms of just the stroke play being so different from your time?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I love all the new shots that they're playing. I wish I experimented with some before I retired. But obviously, the longer version of the game, opposing captains are not that defensive. So you have a lot of opportunities to score. But I think that the present-day player has evolved in a way that it's only beneficial for the game. A lot of people like talking about the past players and how good they were, and these young players are not good enough. I think these players are very, very good players. I believe concentration-wise, because they're playing the shorter version of the game, they struggle a bit in the test arena, but I have great appreciation for them.
Sachin, what about you? Any shot you would like to have tried?
I have a couple of shots that I did not play, like Brian said. One is the scoop of a fast bowler keeper's head.
Yeah.
I've not played that. And neither have I played the switch hit over cover.
Yeah.
Uh, I still feel not all batters play all the shots. There are some batters who manage to do that. So it's a combined effort. So you look at someone like Virat, Rohit, or for that matter, even Chris Gale. You know, from the recent past, they never played all these shots, but still, you know, they've done well. And the person is sitting right next to me. He never played all the shots. His strike rate was phenomenal, and he could.
Some would say you didn't need to.
Yeah, because there are players, but like you said, that the game is evolving,
Yeah.
and players practice all these shots. It is all about practicing, and then you know once you know certain movements, your hands become really important.
Yeah.
Even if your footwork is not there, because that is what T20 also demands. You know, your wrist work, your hands. If you have good hands, you manage to play all these shots. But I have seen during these IPL tournaments that the players are practicing these shots. They're not experimenting out there in the middle. They practice these shots in
Right.
the nets, because to an outsider, you feel that, oh, why is he taking this risk? But they're practicing, and the game is going to continue changing.
So we're totally out of time. Who's your pick for the final tomorrow?
I think Pakistan has the better team in terms of the individual players. England is playing a very well structured cricket, but I would like to see the trophy stay in Asia.
Sachin, what do you think?
I think looking at the ground dimensions, it's going to be England. I differ a little bit. Yes, the momentum with Pakistan is just kind of peaking at the
Peaking,
right time.
yeah.
Nobody thought
92
they would
similarities sort
be
of
there,
arising.
but maybe England might get them to play square of the wicket, where in Melbourne, square of the wicket, the boundaries are longer, straighter boundaries are short. Each ground's dimension is different. I mean, Adelaide, you have
Yeah.
short square boundaries and reasonably longish straight boundaries. So I have this feeling that up front, the new ball, they'll look to swing, and later on, they'll be kind of short of length, forcing them to play square of the ground.
That's all we have time for. Thank you so much, everybody. Some nostalgia, a bit of a batting masterclass, and a prophecy at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that riveting session, Sachin and Brian. May I request Kunal to please do us the honors of presenting you each with a token of our appreciation. Brian Lara and Sachin Tendulkar. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.